Welcome to, I guess this is the third season of Journeys. Wow. This is my interview show that I've been doing for 3 seasons with different people in the region that have interesting lives, interesting backgrounds. They could be artists, they could be musicians is another show on harmonies, but also I get the opportunity to speak to Meg Kilcoyne, who is our state representative for the 12th district. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Very exciting to be here in season 3 of the show.
Yes.
In studio also.
I know.
Great.
Because usually we've been doing it through Zoom.
Yes.
So now we can actually sit down and have a conversation face to face, which is lovely. Okay, well, I have some questions for you. You're up for re-election, is that correct?
Correct. So it's 2-year terms. Okay. I was first elected in 2020, and so we're at 2022. So there is everybody's up for re-election every 2 years.
Okay.
But it's perfect time to sit down and talk with you because we can talk about what's been going on for the last year and a half at the State House.
Exactly. And exciting to be there, Okay, I guess my first thought was, okay, you're a state representative. Yeah. What's that about?
So, great question, because not everybody, I think, knows maybe who their state rep is or what they do. So, basically, what my job is I'm elected to represent, like you said, the 12th Worcester District. So that includes the towns of Berlin, Boylston, Clinton, Lancaster, Sterling, and Northborough. Each district is about 40,000 people, and there are 160 representatives in the House of Massachusetts. Okay. There's also a state Senate, which is about 40 members. Their districts are a little bigger. They represent more people. But basically, my job is to work with the 200 other legislators in one way, shape, or form to pass legislation and policy that impacts everybody in the Commonwealth. So my job is not that dissimilar to what, say, a congressperson would do down in D.C., but everything we do is in Massachusetts. And so, we go to the State House and we take our votes. And one thing I think is important to know is, like, a lot of people see, D.C. in the news and federal legislation and all that, but what you find is the more closer to home you are, the bigger impact that you can have on people's lives. Yeah. And so one thing that's great about my job is I'm very honored to do it and to have the privilege to have done it the last 2 years, but trying to think of ways that we can help both the residents that live in our districts and then hopefully help everybody as a whole. Because I think there are a lot of overlapping needs that just, transcend boundaries. That said, one thing that's also really important for me, though, is making sure that the unique needs of our district are heard on Beacon Hill. So one thing that I love about the communities in the 12th Worcester District is that there's a lot of different, all the towns are so unique. You have Clinton, which is a bit more, a little bit more densely populated, almost kind of has some characteristics of a tiny city. Yes. There's about 15,000 people, so not that big, but it's a tiny town, and there's a lot going on there. But then surrounding Clinton, you have towns like Lancaster and Sterling and Berlin and Boylston, and those tend to be a bit more rural, a bit smaller, and a bit more spread out. And so one thing that I think that I've really enjoyed over the last 2 years is working with municipals and community leaders of all those towns, figuring out kind of what some of their struggles are that are quite distinct oftentimes, and finding ways to give voice to those on Beacon Hill. So when we do vote on policies, we're making sure that our region also gets to share in some of the benefits of that. So, so that's been, and we can kind of I don't want to delve too deeply in because it's the first question, but well, I'm sure we'll get into more of those details as we go on. Yes. Because I do think that it's important to note that while the votes that I take are an important part of the job, there is other areas that you have to be focused on as well. So things like constituent services. And this is something a lot of people might not think that their state rep can do for them. But one thing that we're here for is to try to help people in our communities that may be having issues dealing with state government or have some sort of problem to reach out to us and see if we can fix. And so we have, in the last couple of years, we've helped maybe hundreds of people dealing with unemployment benefits. When I was elected, I came in 2021. I was sworn in the first week of January, and we had over almost 100 people that reached out they had reached out to my predecessor, Harold Naughton, who was elected before me, and then they were ongoing. So we got all these cases on day one of people that had been entitled to unemployment benefits, but just due to the overwhelming need during the pandemic years, the system was completely overwhelmed. So we were able to, with a lot of those cases, kind of cut through the red tape and just make sure that, information got to where it needed to go, and people that were entitled to those benefits, it got back in their hands. It can be any issue, really. So people reach out to us that maybe have questions about, what's going on with the state on this issue. It may be something we can help with, but sometimes we can figure out the best person that can address those needs or put people in touch with them. So we really try to make sure that people know, call us. We can maybe help. People don't realize, I think, that their state rep or their state senator can do those kinds of things as well. And then we're not just about voting on those, taking that vote in Beacon Hill. We're trying to be here in our community and help make those connections as well. So, and I would think too, just so that you got the constituent services, you got kind of making sure you're getting local resources to your community. And then finally, I think the third bucket is maybe some of those more broader issues that maybe are not specific to your district, but could help the Commonwealth as a whole. So for instance, and we can get into this a little later, in my first 2 years, I was able to work on a couple pieces of interesting legislation. And one got signed into law concerning veterans benefits that I was really proud about. So you get to learn a lot in the job. You get to hopefully help as many people as you can. Sure. And those are the things that I love about it is at the end of the day, if you can help one person, then it makes everything worth it.
Exactly. So. Wow. Okay. So in terms of people who need help, what's the stepping stones, I guess? Do they go to their local government first and see if they can be helped there? And then if they're not getting any answers, they come see you?
It varies so much, because we get people, it could be people that maybe have tried to, register online for benefits or something, or doing something with the state and just maybe are confused or don't know how to do it and just need somebody to guide them. They can call our office and we can try to help as best we can. It can be people that maybe we get some people that call concerning, federal issues. So for instance, say we're applying for a passport and there was some issue with it. They might call our office and we don't have jurisdiction over that. But what we can do is we make sure that they're connected to our colleagues in Congress. So either a senator's office or one of the Congress people's office that represents the area. And then they can help. And so sometimes it's connecting people, but it's really, we just try to make ourselves accessible because I think, you just never know what people are going to need help with. And so I always try to encourage somebody, like, even if you don't know if I can help, you should reach out anyway. And sometimes that's on social media. Sometimes that's, calling the office, emailing the office. And we do try to, we're finally kind of starting to roll out some office hours in the last few months now that, it's safe to do so. So we get people that, might see my aide, Josh Duhamel. He's all over the district all the time. And he's able to kind of, maybe take an intake of a problem and go over it with me. And then we can start that process of trying to help them out. So it really can be anything that you guys can offer services.
Because I guess you're right. People don't understand that it's not just this high level type of thing that our government is always working on and always, the big stuff. It is the little stuff that, someone like myself who might need help.
Right.
We want to go to someone like you and say, hey, what can you do? Or even on the federal level, if someone can go to find someone on the federal level to help. People don't realize that because all we see is what's happening up here. So it really is good to know that that we can come to you with our little problem, and you're there to help us with that. And
Yeah.
I think that's really important, especially now and the times that we have now to know that. So that's great. That's great. So what's going on now that's affecting the district? What's going on with bills or...
Yeah. So it's been, like I was kind of saying earlier, it's a 2-year term. Mm-hmm. So the way that it works is starting in 2021, full formal sessions goes from that January start date to the end of July. And so what that means is we are in the State House voting as an entire body, so to speak. So like everybody that is elected in the House and the Senate goes in to vote on legislation. And so you have to get big bills passed in that span of time. So the last couple of years, it's a very, very long process. You start off with the bills filed. You file them all in January. So you get that filed, and then it gets assigned to a committee. And the committees are ways in which we can hold hearings on certain pieces of legislation, and it has public has an opportunity to go to the hearing or send in testimony for or against bills, and that helps us kind of learn a little bit more about it, what might be the benefits, what might be the problems, and then after usually around February of the second year, committees have to make a decision on those bills, and they have to be reported out favorably or unfavorably, and then we kind of have a sprint to the end line to see how much to try to get as many bills as we can done that are ready that we feel are priorities for that session. And there's bills that there's about 6,000 bills filed.
Wow.
So, and very few of them actually get signed into law.
Right.
But it is by design. It's a deliberative process purposely because everybody, I think, wants to make sure that these are very carefully vetted and before, going to the governor's desk.
Okay.
So I think, what we saw this past summer is we saw a huge need for people to get some relief, economically. We had incredibly high inflation rates and gas prices were surging. And so there was a economic development bill that we were trying to get done. However, unfortunately, both the House and Senate side had very different, some issues that couldn't be worked out in compromise. So those conversations didn't get done in July, and they're still ongoing.
Okay.
I think that what we'll see happen in the next few months is if there is any agreement that can be reached with the House and Senate, we're hopefully going to see something maybe come out before the end of the year. But if not, that's going to be number one on the agenda in January.
So you take it right back up.
Yeah, and I should add there was a complicating factor as to one of the reasons it didn't get done is the 62F law, which is a 1986 law that had been put in place during the Reagan administration that if revenues hit a certain rate, would put money back into the pockets of folks in the Commonwealth.
Okay.
So because that law was written so long ago, it's never been triggered. And so one thing that's been a bit unique about the economic situation is our revenues were very good, despite the fact that we knew we needed to try to bring people relief because there was still a lot of disparity and people were still struggling. But unfortunately, that 1986 law was not really on anyone's radar. So when it got triggered in July, we wanted to make sure that this economic package that we were debating was about $4 billion. And if we had just passed that without taking into account the impacts this law was going to have, it was going to really go far, far higher than we anticipated. Okay. So the good news is people will be getting a check, I think in November, with money that they are owed due to the high revenues. I think it was about $3 billion or so was going to go back into their pockets. There is a way you can calculate that. It's based on your tax returns. Sure. So, and I would encourage anyone watching, if you have any questions about that, please reach out to our office. We're happy to help. Great. And then once we know that impact, I think we're going to have a longer conversation about the best way to kind of address some of those economic needs.
Okay. So this would address, cost of everything.
Yeah. So certain things, it was also looking at some of the tax reform as well. So things like the estate tax, which hadn't been touched since the 1970s, maybe upping that threshold to make sure that some, which the estate tax is with it's capped right now at 1 million. So, if you pass away, your descendants would get taxed on that. Most states have it up at 2 million though, because inflation has made that amount far higher than it used to be. We also had a senior circuit breaker tax. We increased, I think, the level of deductions that seniors could get back from that in the House version of the bill. And then we also tried to increase create more tax benefits for families in general. So it was really looking to try to make sure that we were addressing those that maybe were struggling a little more economically, but making sure also people across the spectrum could feel some sort of benefit from that bill. Okay. So I think we're going to have a longer conversation about that come January.
Great. Okay. Now, is there anything you can do about the cost of electricity?
So that is certainly, I think, on everyone's mind, especially as we head into winter, because electric prices are going to continue to raise as people need to, heat their homes. So like I said, the tricky thing about this period, though, is that we're not in full formal sessions. So it is kind of what they'd call maybe a lame duck situation. Maybe not for everybody, but I think it's important to note that I think everybody is still keeping their pulse strongly on what people need and that they need relief soon. So I think what we'll see is we're looking at this now. We have to get through the end of the session. And if things can pass between now and January, but I think what happens is when you pass, it's called an informal session. So not everybody has to be there. You can pass laws there, even if you have at least, what they call a quorum. So a few legislators can pass laws, but if one person votes against it, it's dead. So that's why anything that passes between now and the end of the year has to have unanimous support across the board. So I think in terms of packages, what has to happen is everybody has to be on board. Nobody can be against anything, and so these things have to be really heavily vetted.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
But I would say too, again, to go back to our conversation earlier, if people are having problems or struggling, reach out to our office, because there are resources out there that can help for fuel assistance in the immediate interim. So, and we are happy to do what we can to try to connect folks to resources out there if they need it right now.
Okay, good. Do you happen to know if the applications are out yet for fuel assistance?
I can check that for you. We can talk offline if you want. Because I want to say Mock in the areas has some resources out there, but let's chat offline.
Sure. Because we're starting to look at that.
Oh yeah, I mean it's been a pretty cold week, so
So we're working with all our new staff in Lancaster to start doing that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, that would be great. Let's see, what else? Okay, and in terms of the folks in the district, what are you hearing about what their needs are? I'm going to be biased. Let's take Lancaster.
Yeah.
What are you hearing? Is there anything that you hear that's important to the town of Lancaster right now?
So I think one thing that actually recently that we did for Lancaster, or that I think will hopefully go to addressing some of the needs in Lancaster. One thing that's I think interesting about Lancaster, it's, as you know, it's a very beautiful town, very scenic, but a little bit quieter, right? There's not a ton of businesses there, but it's a historic town,
right?
1630s, but the thing that you have about Lancaster, you have some major routes that go through your town that lead right to Route 2. So, specifically that intersection on, I believe it's Route 70 and 117, that intersection right by the school that you have to go through to get to Route 2 has been really backlogged in traffic over the years and has actually had several accidents that occurred. So I was just with Congresswoman Lori Trahan last week, along with Senator Cronin. We try to keep in touch with our federal officials as much as we can about certain needs that are impacting our communities. And I was really pleased that Congresswoman Trahan was able to secure about $4 million in funds to fix that intersection and make sure that it can handle the traffic load better and be safer for everybody involved. Right. So trying to alleviate some of that congestion, trying to make sure that the right safeguards are in place for reducing accidents and making it a safer commute for everybody. So hopefully it'll have a way to kind of help the people that live right around there that probably are sick of seeing, traffic backlogs all the time, making sure, especially where it's near a school, reducing the number of accidents, and just easing some of that traffic burden onto what is a major fairway. So I think that's an example of something I've heard from folks, really displeased that we're able to get, hopefully address that problem. But it's certainly ongoing. Like infrastructure impacts every community. There's a lot of roads that need fixing and a lot of bridges that need fixing. But that would be an example of Lancaster specific that we can fortunately say that we were able to address that. So,
the other thing you mentioned is, and I think is very interesting about the bill that you passed into law, was the veterans.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that?
So, when I before I got elected, got to work on several veterans issues because my predecessor, Harold Naughton, who was the state rep for many years, I was his legislative director, and he was a veteran himself. So I got to really get to know different groups in that community and work on some issues that would impact them. So when I got elected, it was something that I wanted to continue to work on. I think everyone can agree it's important that we support our veteran community. And I was really thrilled to partner with the National Guard in filing a piece of legislation that would ensure that National Guard members could access educational benefits that would put them in line with what federal benefits offer for veterans across the board. The National Guard is kind of in a unique spot because unlike the Army or Marines or Navy or Air Force or any other branches of the armed forces, they are under the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth. Okay. So, you hear the president as the commander-in-chief of the Army and the military. Right. The governor is the commander-in-chief of the National Guard. They are under direct state authority. So what you see sometimes is that if you serve in a different branch of the Army, you may have access to benefits that Guard members don't always get to have access to. So this was a way to try to bring some equity there and make sure that the members that have opted to serve our country by enlisting in the National Guard could still support their families in the same way. And so this was an individual bill that I filed, and it went through the Veterans and Federal Affairs Committee. It was reported out favorably. And then in June, the committee took a bunch of different bills that were impacting veterans. Notably, I think the biggest one that we did that was kind of the driver of this larger piece was ensuring that there was certain flexibility with licensure. So if you're, a member of the Army, your spouse may have, be a licensed, plumber or something. And you might have to live, you might live in New Mexico for a while and then get transferred up to Massachusetts. So what we wanted to make sure is that for those members of the armed forces that were coming into Massachusetts from out of state due to military assignments, their family members could easily transfer some of their licenses to the state. So it'd ease a little bit of that, that transition. And then we also, I'm trying to think what was else in that bill. There was also things regarding burial benefits. So sometimes, as many know, it's really expensive for a funeral. And this was a way to make sure that if you're a veteran, some of that burden is eased. And then my bill was included in this as well. So it was a much larger package that we passed in the House. That bill was in it, and it was signed into law in the governor. So I was really proud to see that. Like I said earlier, when you have 6,000 bills filed, not all of them are going to get before the governor's desk. So
that's terrific.
And
you were able to do that.
Yeah, and on a personal level, I have a lot of friends currently that are in the Guard, and one of my best friends actually, her husband's a Guard member, and he was deployed for 60 days while she was pregnant with a 2-year-old at home.
My goodness.
I think we ask our Guard members in the state to do a lot. They're not just in Massachusetts; they do get deployed. So it was meaningful for me in my first term to be able to get that particular bill over the finish line.
Very good.
Yeah.
Are they heading down to Florida, our Guard? Do you know?
So I don't know. I haven't seen if they've been deployed there. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
I'm sure we do try to offer support. I know where we can, and. But it is amazing what they get deployed to do. Earlier this year we had a school bus shortage in the state.
Right.
The Guard started driving kids to school. Yeah. So they are, it's incredible that what they can do in short notice. So if I haven't seen that in the news yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if they do get sent down there to help.
Well,
and we're certainly thinking of everybody in Florida that are dealing with the aftermath of that. It's horrifying, but
I know. Who would think that Mother Nature would be that incredibly strong and powerful? But wow, I know. Okay, well, I want to thank you so much for coming on my show. This has been so delightful.
Yeah,
that we're able to do this, and I hope people will get out and vote in November. And
everybody should vote, no matter who they're voting for. Just get out to the
So I wish you the best of luck with that, and I guess that will be it for today. My name is Denise Hurley, and Representative Megan Kilcoyne. Oh, yes.
Hi, everybody. Should I just...
Yeah, how people can get a hold of you? Yes, please.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. My name is Meg Kilcoyne, and like I said in the show, please do not hesitate to reach out to my office, whether it's for help, whether it's to talk about a bill or a policy idea. You can reach me via email at megan.kilcoyne@mahouse.gov. Or you can call my office. Also on social media, so you can find me that way as well. And we also post when our office hours are. So thank you all so much for watching.
All right. Thank you again. See you next time.